come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3.
Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.
Oh, my goodness.
Two on the clock.
Alrighty guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix NBL SuperCoach Sessions. Round number 6 is just around the corner, and we are back with the best NBL SuperCoach podcast going around. Forget News Corp, forget the official NBL SuperCoach podcast. We are the two guys that you guys want to be listening to. As always, though, I'm joined by my good mate, Jeremy Darke. How are you going, mate?
I'm going very well. It was a little bit of a better week in SuperCoach last week, thank God, after two really massive duds. So I think the best thing out of that was didn't do anything stupid like not captain PJC. Because, geez,
Definitely.
if you didn't do that, and you're in big trouble this week because he's just a machine. You got to have him as captain over the next 3 weeks while they got their double game weeks.
No, I think it's as simple as it gets, I think, in terms of playing a fantasy or SuperCoach sport of any sort of sense as well. But let's get into, obviously, what we did score and our rankings as well. Now, I want to start with yourself, Jez. What's your ranking and what did you score last week?
All right. I went up a little bit, went up 366 spots. Would have liked a little bit more, but had a few underperformers, especially on my bench, but impressed that I at least went up this week again. Trying to break the 1,000 mark this week would be nice. So scored 373. So it was I think that was around the 1,400 mark there in the week's best. So wasn't a bad week. Went all right, could have been better, was better than you, and my goal in all of this is just to be better than you, ultimately. So I'm doing good. I think I've done that in 3 out of 4 weeks or 4 out of 5 weeks or whatever it is. So doing okay.
No, definitely. You have started very, very well, but now it's my time to shine over these next couple of weeks.
I'm shit in my pants.
I scored 304 points this past round. It moved back to 895 spots as well to 2,867, which is a little bit disgusting to be looking at right now. But at the end of the day, I only had 2 guys in the double. Plus, I used a boost and wasn't able to trade out Shea Illy as well, who was injured with a late injury there as well. So copped a DNP there for Shea Illy. But again, last week was about making that little bit of extra cash to be able to attack the trade market this week, which I'm looking forward to obviously touching on very, very shortly. Now, let's get into some of our good and bad performers, mate. Now, I'm going to kick it off with you, and I want you to tell me a couple of the good performers that you currently have in your team that played well for you last week to give you that 373-point score.
Yeah, well, obviously we don't have to talk about Parker Jackson Cartwright. That's a given. Topped the league, was an absolute gun. But I think what I'm most happy about, probably after the few rounds before, was getting 60 out of Will Magnay. I think there was a lot of people that were in a very, very similar boat to me that sort of put your faith in Magnay to at least, score okay. And he's bombed those couple of weeks. So it was nice to at least get 60. It wasn't anything special, but it covered what he needed to cover. And then, it was the Adelaide boys that I kept in my team. They obviously go on a run of singles, but they did well. Montrezl Harrell and Kendrick Davis were both, stats machines. So we were talking about, okay, how many players do you need to have in your team that are on double game weeks? And I was lucky enough, and probably the difference between my team and your team was I kept these guys that still scored extremely well. They might get the chop this week, but I'm happy that they were definitely in my team this week and both scored over 40. What about you?
Yeah, they had good weeks for you, mate. I think that was one of the things as well. And the Will Magnay won 60 points. It's just about par for him. I think it was nice to obviously be able to get that little bit of injection of points from him. But Yeah, I had a few guys that went well, to be honest with you. Sam Wardenberg had another big game, 36 points in a single game week, rose another 30.2K this week, Jez. So I know you were very, very close to bringing him in, and you missed out on that little injection of cash. So he's made just under 75K on the season so far. And then the other one for me in terms of a good performer was obviously Casey Prather, who scored another 20 points, which isn't the best part of it. He made me another 30K this week as well, and still has a reasonably good break even coming into round number 6, where they're 3 weeks away from their double game weeks. So if I can still make a little bit of cash and keep him in for those sort of run of doubles that they have, I think it might be a good little thing for me going forward. But let's get into some of the guys who were relatively poor for us on the weekend. Now, I've got a couple of guys here. Jack White's the first one for me. So the thing with Jack White is 19 points, not too bad, but I did start him obviously when I could have obviously started some other guys. But at the end of the day, though, it's a poor week just because of how good he has been throughout the season so far. So he comes into this week, I think, with a 68 break even, I think it was, and he's projected to score 75. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see obviously what they do with Jack White over the next couple of weeks, because he's been probably their best player, to be honest with you. So with a nice little run coming up, he's going to be a definite hold. And the other one was Sam Menenga as well. So 32 points in a double game week. Just really struggled to find his shot, wasn't getting the rebounds. And looked like they were trying to fade him out of the rotation a little bit in that second game there against the Perth Wildcats as well. But 32 points just doesn't cut it in a double game week, where we bring in a guy like him who, what are we expecting? 45 to 50 probably, I think, was probably a nice little pass score, to be honest with you, but we got 32, so very disappointing. But what about yourself, Jez? You had a couple of disappointing guys on your team in the weekend as well.
No, well, I think we got for me, I got a little bit stuck on this whole Sydney rotation problem to start with Cam Oliver. We discussed it in our Beyond the Buzzer episode, where their rotation is killing them, and Oliver's producing and his stats are there, especially offensively, but he's just not getting the minutes that we thought that he would be getting. So that's been a little bit disappointing, because he was a guy I think that decided to hold in some of these single game weeks, and I think a lot of people did that, and it hasn't really paid off. And now, like, even sort of looking to move on from him, even though Sydney do have some double game weeks coming up, because you're not utilising your double game week players if they're only scoring 10 points for you. So yeah, that's is really, really disappointing. And Kieran Galloway also suffering. He had, coming into round 5, he had the highest shooting percentage of any player in the NBL, and he missed a couple of shots to start the game and got benched. So yeah, it was really, really, really tough to see. Tough to see for Cairns, because they're struggling and they need a guy like Galloway, I think, that has been playing so well to start the year, and then you just chop him off at the knees. So not only for super coaches, because it sucked that he didn't score those sort of 25 30s that I think that we sort of expected him to do, but it's horrible for Cairns, because he's a guy that I think could really change things for Cairns, and he's not getting the time on the court. So yeah, that was a little bit tough, but it was, at least my bench players that hurt me this week, because I made the right decision to hold some of those Adelaide guys in my starting lineup. So I just got lucky, but you need the Supercoach gods to shine on you sometimes.
You do. You definitely do need that. And obviously the Kieran Galloway one, I want to touch on that quickly, because that is just the definition and the epiphany of the 40 factory working in full effect as well. So, they've obviously got such an influx of these big guys with AK Gack and Sam Wardenberg, and Pedro Bradshaw had a breakout game as well in that particular game as well. So it just comes down to whoever's hot will get the minutes, whoever's not will sit on the bench and maybe play the next game as well. And that's the reason why Sam Menenga left this team as well, to obviously go back to the homeland and the New Zealand Breakers. So it's going to be very interesting. But Galloway has a break even, for anyone playing at home with Galloway, has a break even of 42 for this week as well in a double game week. So a very, very doable score to be able to hit. But it's a tough one, because I think you brought him in after his initial price rises. So at this stage, he's currently up 41. Yeah, so he's currently, as an overall sort of player, 41.3k points over where he started, but he lost 15k of that over the weekend. But let's get into some of the injuries, and obviously this is a major one, I think, that I'm going to touch on here first in terms of obviously looking at in terms of what I had in my particular team and the run of doubles that this team does have coming up, and that's Shea Ili. So Shea Ili did not play on the weekend after a calf injury in the last session before the game on the weekend. Now, it was a really smart hold, I thought, for myself, and I was looking forward to obviously this run of doubles that was coming up for Melbourne United, and he had a very low break even on the weekend, which he was going to probably, I'd say, most likely hit to be able to make a little bit more cash as well, to probably be sitting up around that 260 to 270k price point, but went down with a calf injury. Really, really killed me on the weekend in terms of obviously what I was looking to do with my team this week. But I think it opens the door for a few other Melbourne United players, which we will touch on a little bit later in today's episode. And probably the biggest injury topic and probably news of the round was Bryce Cotton, mate, wasn't it? And can you shed a little bit of insight into obviously what that means, not only for the Perth Wildcats, but SuperCoach as well, as a massive fallback for obviously the 0-point performance from Bryce Cotton on the weekend?
Yeah, well, it obviously is going to hurt his money generation, but it could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise maybe, because Perth go on a massive run. Is it from next week or the week after where they go on a big run of doubles? So
they've got a single this week and 5 doubles after that.
Yeah, so I think it all depends obviously on how long Bryce is going to be out, but it could open up an opportunity where you could get Bryce a little bit cheaper than what you possibly could have if he didn't obviously go down injured so early in the game and score no points. So could be a benefit in the end, but I think you're still going to have to wait for that effect, which that's going to be the big call, because it's like, okay, Bryce is fit and he's ready. He's going to play his 35 minutes. He's going to score all those points. Do you bring him straight away and pay top dollar? Or do you wait that maybe that extra week or another week where this zero starts to play in the averages and his price goes down? So maybe it's going to be a cash flow problem for you. But obviously by the end of the year, you're most likely thinking that you're going to have Bryce Cotton and PJC as your starting guard. So it's just when you pick them up. But I think that's going to be the biggest effect, is when do you pick up Bryce once he starts playing again? Do you wait for it to drop, or do you pick him up straight away? So massive, massive injury out. And then I think another injury that we've got to sort of talk about now is with Southeast Melbourne going on their run of doubles is Derek Walton Jr. Out with a hamstring injury. We're not sure how serious it is just yet, but he's going to be out, and it sort of affects, okay, I think we bring up this conversation now, Josh, is who do you bring in? Who's going to benefit the most from Walton Jr. coming out? Is it Nathan Sobey, or what sort of, I've been looking at a little bit now as well, is Angus Glover?
It's a tough one, mate, to be honest with you. And the reason I won't answer this wholeheartedly is the fact that they've got their brand new coach coming in. So we don't even know if he is liking certain other players to maybe fill that void. So maybe it's an Owen Foxwell. Maybe it is him. And he's priced at 80k right now. So if he comes into this team, and let's just say he's the starting point guard, that's a massive lock for anyone who's playing NBL SuperCoach, because you're going to see him obviously score some major, major points for this team. But if it's Angus Glover, you'd absolutely love that, mate, because we'll look at our teams a bit later on, and one of us do have him in our team as it currently sits right now. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Sobey's the name I think that probably will benefit the most, but I've got a certain player in my team, Matt Hurt. Maybe he gets affected by maybe the lack of leadership on the offensive end at the point guard spot, with obviously Derek Walton Jr. going out of this rotation. So there's a few questions going on, because I think Derek Walton Jr., whilst his stats haven't been mind-blowing and MVP sort of numbers, and obviously what he was doing a few years ago for the Sydney Kings, his importance to this team is second to none within the NBL world. So that is a major, major watch for this team. But it's a really important sort of injury to touch on there, which is one of those things that we have to touch on here at the Basketball Fix. But going back to Bryce Cotton quickly, mate, he has a break-even of 51 when he does come back, and that's a single game week break even as well, which is huge. Now, if he doesn't hit that, let's just say he scores 30, he will go down 20K from that particular point there. He's already down $106,000 from his price at the start of the season, currently sitting at 342. Now, we had obviously sort of touched on at the start of the year, I was thinking about starting Bryce. Let's just imagine that I started with Bryce. I'd be down 100K from one of the best players in the competition, and everyone would be picking him up dirt cheap in terms of obviously when we're bringing in this guy in their massive run of double game weeks as well. So it's going to be very interesting, but everyone's going to get him for a very good price, and I think majority of the teams are going to have Bryce Cotton in them, and it's going to be a very interesting question in terms of, do you take the little bit extra of a cash drop to have him in very quick, or do you wait a couple of weeks to see what he is doing for the Perth Wildcats? But before we get into our next segment, we're going to take a very, very short break here, and we'll be back with some of our schedulizer thoughts. Alrighty, so we are back and looking forward to obviously continuing on with this episode right here. Now, we're going to be jumping in to some of our schedulizer thoughts, and we're going to be kicking it off with teams that have double game weeks coming up in round number 6 of NBL SuperCoach. Now, we're going to break this into a couple of different little topics here and touch on teams who will go into double game weeks or a run of double game weeks, and then we'll touch on the teams that have double game weeks this week and single game weeks next week, and then we're going to throw it over to Jez, and Jez has got the teams who are playing singles this week, and we'll be touching on whether we look to bring them in this week, obviously if they've got runs of doubles, or if we're looking to avoid them for a couple of weeks to go on as
now,
well.
huh? It's getting really
definitely
serious.
is. If you look at the schedulizer, and if you
crazy.
guys haven't downloaded, for sure. And if you haven't downloaded the schedulizer, make sure you go check us out on www.thebasketballfix.com. Click on the NBL SuperCoach section there. The scheduliser's there. Make sure you download that, because if you look at that middle part of the season, Jez, there is a lot of green, and green means double game weeks as well. But let's get into this. So the first 3 teams that we're going to touch on is obviously Melbourne United and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Now, they've obviously got a run of 3 double game weeks. So when we're looking at those, obviously guys like Matthew Dellavedova are very appealing with Shea Ili out. I think if you're going for a little bit cheaper, you could look at guys like Chris Goulding or Ian Clark, I should say as well, not Ian Goulding. But they're 3 guys that I would probably be looking at from a Melbourne United standpoint. And then from Southeast Melbourne, like we touched on there as well, guys like Sobey, Matt Hur, I think even Malik Lewis is a guy who might see some increased court time under this new coach as well, because it's a next star program. That is the whole point of it. He has to play big minutes. He has to obviously continue to develop and try to improve his draft stock. So he's another guy to be looking at. And then there's 2 other teams as well in New Zealand and Sydney who now still have or have just come in to a double run as well. So they'll play 2 games this week and 2 games next week as well. So if we're looking at obviously people who are coming into our squads in terms of an overall consistency point or even longevity, those 2 teams as well. Obviously, most people will have Parker Jackson Cartwright. Maybe some have Sam Menenga. Matt Mooney is another one to obviously look at, maybe bring in after an incredible round. They're some of the New Zealand guys. But I think a lot of people have got Sydney guys. Like I've got Kelly Lepepe, Tyler Robertson. You've had obviously Cam Oliver. A lot of people have had Jalen Adams, Xavier Cooks. A lot of Sydney guys have been in our teams to start the season purely because of their really, really incredible run. So it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of people have held the Sydney Kings players, and this is obviously the time where you want to capitalize on them. But obviously, we still have another couple of teams here with double game weeks this week that obviously don't go into double game weeks next week. So I'm speaking of obviously the Cairns Taipans and the Illawarra Hawks. So this is obviously for the Cairns Taipans, their last double game week for 5 rounds, and the Illawarra Hawks, this will be their last double game week for 4 rounds as well. So if you've got either of those 2 teams with any players in your squad, this is the week after this round sort of thing that you'll be looking to get rid of them. So a guy like Sam Wardenberg, this will probably be his last week for me in my team. So hopefully I can send him out with somewhat of a bang. But let's get into your sort of side of the schedule, mate. I hope he doesn't. But
I'm
let's
tired
get into
of
some of your
seeing
thoughts, mate. But
Wardenberg's price go up and up and up as like we were
yes,
talking about, obviously our team values and stuff like that, and half of your team value, the difference between you and me is Sam
yep,
Wardenberg. So I hope
for
he breaks
sure.
his leg. It better not happen now. I'm going to feel real bad. Put on the curse. But
I hope he gives an 80-pointer performance for me, mate. That'd be awesome.
yeah,
But
but
let's get
single
into some
game
of
weeks
obviously what
anyway.
you've got.
Yeah,
Yep.
single game weeks. I think the biggest one, the most probably notable when it comes to these single game weeks, is what you do with your Jack Jumpers players. Once again, Magnay will likely stay another week purely because the Jack Jumpers then go on a run of 2 double game weeks after this single. So, especially I think because he did all right, his break even come down a little bit, which is definitely manageable this week. So, you hopefully get a price rise out of him, especially after those 2 double game weeks. So important to keep them. If you brought in some extra Jack Jumpers last week because they were on the double with New Zealand, then they're definitely keepers, I think, this week. Then you go in, Adelaide 36ers players. It's time for them likely to go out, especially if you can fill your starters with double game week players. The likes of Montrezl Harrell, Kendrick Davis. If you had DJ, then DJ is probably on the chopping block as well, because they're players that have, at least Kendrick Davis and Montrezl Harrell, have consistently scored sort of 35, 45 points, anywhere in that range. So they're a good hold. But I think the only player that I possibly will be looking to hold, I think Kendrick Davis's break evens at like 32, but Harrell's break evens at 17. So there's another price rise left in him. So if you're not desperate for the cash that he already is bringing to bring in somebody else, then I think he's definitely a hold this week and get that little bit extra change out of him by holding him. And plus, you're getting probably 40 points on your bench, which also is extremely handy. So yeah, when it comes, and then you've got Brisbane players there, like you said. If I wouldn't suspect most people have Brisbane players, but if you do, you're probably planning to hold them for the rest of their single run, and then until they go on their doubles. So yeah, that's Brisbane, and then the last team is the Perth Wildcats. Now they're a little bit tricky because if you want to be starting to maybe plan for the future and you're feeling very comfortable with the way your team is with double game week starters and players this week, it's maybe not a bad idea to bring in a Perth player to cover so you're not wasting a trade. But that's if you've got the trades and your team is looking pretty set up already for this week. With so many teams being on doubles, you might be feeling good about yourself. And if you have that trade, then bringing in somebody maybe like, if you need a high scorer like Christian Doolittle, or looking at sort of where Perth is with Bryce Cotton and who's going to benefit from the absence of Cotton, which is probably likely Ben Henschel. I'm pretty spewing. Just last week, I think I traded out Henschel, and then now he's back in play again, which certainly hurts because he's probably set for a pretty good price rise over the next couple of weeks if Cotton is out for an extended period of time, purely based on minutes. And then he definitely has the potential to have a big game like he did have earlier in the year where he gives you a 30 or something like that. So you're going to earn some cash from players like Henschel. But it is tough because you don't really know what John Riley's going to do and how the rotation's going to see and who's going to benefit the most from that. Could also be Ty Webster, Windler. So there is some names there that you could possibly bring in, but we'll likely dive into those a little bit more next week when Perth are on their double game week. So yeah, really, really interesting now because it's becoming a very, very tactical game with double game weeks and single game weeks and everything moving, and also how many boosts you've got left, because where do you burn them and where do you keep them and how's it going to look at the end of the year? So it's tough, bro. It's really, really tough.
It's exciting though. That's what it's all about now, and this is where I am starting to sort of, I guess, what's the word? Capitalize from, I guess, some patience and obviously
You
some
can say
some
Excel,
money
Josh.
that
You can
obviously.
say Excel.
I can't say excel until I start flying up those rankings, mate. But yeah, I think when we're touching on the Perth Wildcats, I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously, Doolittle's the one for consistent points, but for a little bit of a, I guess, maybe point of difference or a pod, you're probably looking at Ty Webster after his incredible round last week where he had 39 points in Bryce Cotton's sort of absence there as well. But we'll touch on all that next week anyways. We'll make sure we have a pretty big segment there as well, because that's a really important thing there. With them going on 5 straight weeks of doubles, you're going to want to have some Perth Wildcats players in your team for that sort of run there as well. But let's get into, I think, my most favourite and exciting sort of time here when we're touching on NBL SuperCoach, and that is our early trade thoughts. Now, I want you to kick us off here, Jez, because I am chewing at the absolute bit to get stuck into, obviously, my trade thoughts and my team as well, mate. But let's start it all off with you, mate. What are you doing for your trades so far in NBL round at number 6?
Yeah, I can't say that this is definitely going to look like this by game time on Thursday because I even looked at this almost pretty much straight after the games on Sunday and started fiddling around with my team, and I've made so many different combinations already, and then just picked my own trades apart and then redone them, and it's. I think I'm suffering from that early season success that sort of gave me a big head. And I know that you were G'ing me up at the start and certainly giving it to me about it and saying, just be patient. But I'm feeling the strain of that now because I feel like already that I don't have enough cash in the bank. And we're only in week 5 or 6, but I think you had to make the bulk of your money in those first few rounds instead of going for glory as a SuperCoach rookie and trying to stay in the top 500, which fell apart with Jalen Adams anyway. So, but anyway, back to the point of my trades. At the moment, all right, I have traded out my 2 Adelaide guns in Montrezl Harrell and Kendrick Davis, and I've also moved on from Cam Oliver. Now, what I have done at the moment, I don't know, I've felt it's purely emotional, but I've felt that I need to have, or that everybody needs to have Xavier Cooks in their team leading up to these 2 double game weeks with Sydney. I think he's been super coach wise, I think he's been the only sort of consistent thing that you can pull out of Sydney at the moment, and he's been scoring extremely well. He was averaging, or maybe even still is averaging, a double-double statistically, which is obviously extremely important for super coaches because you get the bonus. So I feel like heading into these weeks where they're playing 4 games in 2 weeks, that you need to have Xavier Cooks if you're going to have anybody from Sydney. And then I've also, been looking at Matt Hurt because he's been the only sort of real consistent thing coming out of Southeast Melbourne, and they're going on their run. And then at the moment, I have Angus Glover, which is a bold move, and I'm not quite sure if that is going to take. And I'm not even quite sure if I'm going to have Matt Hurt, to be honest, just because there is so many question marks around Southeast Melbourne as a team and how they're going to work with their new coach. And also with Derek Walton Jr. being out, there's so much going on. But if those, like we said earlier, those SuperCoach gods shine on you, and you make the right decisions with them, you could certainly have some point of differences and shoot up these rankings. Because Matt Hurt can deliver, but he could be susceptible to a lower score because he doesn't have Derek Walton Jr. there. But Angus Glover, I think why I have him in my team at the moment is purely because of his break even at -4. I think if he gets more time, you're at least going to get that price rise. And now I'm in that situation where I'm chasing big cash and sort of hoping to find that lottery ticket somewhere. And maybe that is Angus Glover, because like you said earlier, I was looking at Malik Lewis. He had a big performance this week. It felt like he got a lot more time and could possibly see a lot more time there, because I think he definitely has the skills to be in that team and see pretty close to sort of the 20-minute mark, because he definitely has the size. He has the ability. I watched him. I think I messaged Ryan about it this week, where he just left Delhi with concrete concrete in his shoes because he just busted him driving down the lane, and Delhi just sort of watched him move around. So he's definitely got the skills, but Supercoach wise, I think he can get more points if he gets obviously more time. But cash flow wise, that's why I've gone for Glover at the moment. And just sort of the other guy that I've been sort of throwing up is Max Darling for New Zealand. Now, also a huge risk, but he had a massive, massive game against Perth. And the stats and the shooting is one thing. He shot 5 from 7 from the field, 4 from 6 from 3, but it's the time that he got on the court. He was averaging, just by sort of looking raw at his numbers, averaging between sort of 16 and 19 minutes in those first few games, and he got 31 minutes on the court. So that's sort of could be a telling tale. Is he going to get that much time? Was he only getting that much time because he was shooting so well? And when you're hot, you stay on. So it's a little bit of a danger play, but he could definitely be a big, big cash earner as well. But yeah, so I don't know. What are your thoughts just on my trades before I go in and put together my team?
Yeah, I definitely like it. And when we obviously go in and show our teams, after I've obviously broken down what my trades are, I'm interested obviously to see where you have got Glover situated on your team, if he's in the starting lineup or on the bench, because that may play more into my hands when I'm touching obviously on what I do think of those trades. So I'll probably touch on them a little bit closer and a bit more in depth when we go into revealing our teams there, mate. But first, quick thoughts. I like obviously the cash generation of obviously Glover if you do go down that path. I think obviously with a -4 break even and you're obviously chasing a little bit of cash, it's a really great move. And I think Xavier Cooks is an outstanding move for yourself because yes, he's probably highly owned in terms of Supercoach coaches around obviously the NBL world, but it's a bit of a pod in terms of other people as well, because I think he's a genuine captain option. Like I look at my team and obviously, you'll have Parker Jackson Cartwright and Xavier Cooks, but I've only really got Parker Jackson Cartwright, who when I look at my current team, I go, he's a genuine captain option who I haven't really got too many question marks about. So it's nice obviously having that little bit more of a reassurance with another guy like obviously Xavier Cooks in your squad.
Is it really? Because then you just second guess yourself and you always pick the wrong one every time. Every time.
I just don't think you can go wrong with those two guys, though. They can both give you between 60 and 90, to be honest with you, and I think you'd be happy with either way you went. So, yeah, it's genuinely a nice problem to have, to be honest with you. And, you just look at, obviously, what people are doing before the round, and let's just say Parker Jackson Cartwright's captained by 25% of the competition and 55% of the top 1,000 or whatever, then you just go the opposite with Xavier Cooks. Hopefully that Parker Jackson Cartwright tanks it, and you've got a chance to sort of fly up the radar as well. So you can play it into your hands a little bit more than what obviously I can. Obviously, I've got Jack White, who's a guy who I might be able to captain later on, but yeah, there's obviously question marks about that. But I'll get into your trades very, very soon, mate, when our teams come up and we can sort of delve in a little bit deeper to both of each other's teams. But I'm going to get into my trade thoughts, my early trade thoughts right now. Now, I'm really excited for these trades. Now, I obviously had $304,000 to spend this week, and I was looking forward to that. Now, my trades are Rocco Zakarski up to Matt Hurt, which is a massive trade in terms of the grand scheme of things. We're getting rid of a rookie for a guy who's averaging 35.2 Supercoach points per game. And then I'm obviously doing a little bit of a Melbourne United point guard swap. So Shea Illy to Matthew Dellavedova is the true trade, is the trade that I'm doing right now. So it's interesting. Obviously, Delly's got a bit of an injury. I'm a little bit nervous about that, to be honest with you. I'm still tossing up whether I go down Matthew Dellavedova's path. There's a way I can actually get Xavier Cooks in, but you wouldn't believe who I have to bring in at point guard to be able to do that. Who do you reckon, Jez?
Nathan Sobey for sure.
Nathan Sobey, yep, that is right, mate. So it doesn't feel right at all, but yeah, it could be the play. I get Xavier Cooks in, like we're touching on. I get a second genuine captain option, and then obviously get Nathan Sobey, who's probably at bottom price, I'd say, right now, to be able to get a little bit more of a cash injection later on down the season with their nicer run of double game weeks. But let's actually get into breaking down our teams, and I want to bring your team up first, mate. And let's have a bit of a look here. So we're going to bring your team up on the screen right now, and I want you to break down everything going on. Obviously, what you're liking, what you're not liking, and let's have a genuine chat about it right now.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. I'm not completely happy with how everything is going at the moment. I think I've made that pretty clear. But the biggest problem for me, what hurts me the most at the moment, is my bench forwards. Um, Purely based on the fact that these guys are brought in to make money, and now they're about to start losing money. They're both on double game weeks and potentially could both reach their break evens. But I think realistically, the likelihood of both of them hitting their break evens, Kelly Lepepe, for those that obviously can't see, has a break even of 38. And I also have Kieran Galloway, who has a break even of 42. Now, if they get their chances and get their shots, I think definitely. I think Galloway probably is the most likely, but it feels like with Lepepe, he had that really big game there for a while and it pushed everything up and pushed his price up and you earn a bit of cash. But the likelihood of him hitting 38 with his averages is pretty low, I believe. But you just never know. You never know with the rotation of Sydney, and he could definitely get there. But it does have me a little bit worried or a little bit disappointed because the whole point is bringing these guys in to generate cash and then not making the move at the right time to sell them when they hit their peak of their break even. So that kind of sucks. Tyler Robinson, I still have on my bench while we're here, and Jonah Antonio has been an absolute passenger in my team since the beginning, and I just can't seem to get him out. There's just priorities there. He's just not losing. He's just a nothing play, really, because he's going up and down a little bit like a yo-yo, but still is not worth anything, not costing anything. You're really going to have to hit a basement priced person to be able to trade him out and then hope you can make money from that guy with someone that has like just a really big performance somewhere and you can get on that at the right time. And then I also am carrying Will Magnay this week on my bench as my bench center. Now, my starters, I do have Angus Glover there, purely based on the fact I think with the guards that I do have on my bench, he potentially has the chance to score the most points. But it is a real toss up between him and Robinson ultimately, because we've seen that Robinson can go off, but he can also get benched and not score any points either. And then Parker Jackson Cartwright as my captain, Sam Menenga in there as my starting center, and then I have Matt Hurt and Xavier Cooks as my starting forwards. So ultimately, yeah, my starting team's okay, but obviously with a round where there is so many good double game week players, having guys like Angus Glover and Sam Menenga in there is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Like when I look at your team, yeah, like the Menenga Glover sort of combination freaks me out a little bit because let's just say Glover best case scenario gives you a 40, I think personally, over a 2-game sort of split, maybe 45. And Menenga, I think, could be a 50. Yeah, no, definitely. But I think obviously over like a 2-game period, like let's just say 40 to 45 for Glover and I think 50 to 55 for Menenga. Let's just say, someone's got a Matt Hurt at that position and then maybe, I don't know, like a Dellavedova or a Trey Kell. Like you could lose 15 points from Hurt to Menenga as well as, 20 to 30 points with a Glover to obviously Kell, for example. So it's tough, but at the end of the day, though, you're trying to make up cash as well. So you've got to have, I think, Menenga and Glover in there. But yeah, it's definitely a tough one because at the end of the day, you could definitely put in Galloway over Menenga, but then you've got the same sort of problems where it looks like obviously Menenga's going to have a bit more of a solid role. If obviously Cam Oliver was playing the sort of brand of basketball which we've seen over his NBL career, you wouldn't even be worrying about trading him because he's only got a 42 break even and he could definitely hit that in a double game week as well. So you're in a little bit of a hard spot right now. Yeah, exactly. So you're in a bit of a hard spot right now because you haven't got the cash, obviously, to be able to go up to that, top player or even be able to sort of bridge the gap between the cash cows who have made their cash and those sort of mid-price players to get you to that next level. But your team is still solid enough. You've got a projection of 437 and 54K in the bank. So you can't be too disappointed with that in a sense.
No, but it could be better. I think, like you said, the Cam Oliver trade, I think, hurt the most because the whole idea of keeping him those couple of weeks ago was because you expected him to keep scoring the way he was scoring, and then he's just started to lose time, played like 12, 13 minutes or something last weekend. So that's that's the biggest bomb, because then you could have had someone like, Cam Oliver scoring 30, going to give you 60 in there, and then it just changes the whole dynamic of your team. But is what it is.
No,
Get up your
definitely.
team so I can pick it apart.
Yeah, but at least you've still got some little bit of cash generation going on there as well. But let's get up my team. I'm genuinely excited to get this thing up here, mate. Now, I'm going to start off with obviously what I have got on the bench. Now, genuine cash generation still on the bench right now. Now, I think Kelly Lepepe has probably hit his peak unless he gets a nice little injection of points this week. So obviously, like you mentioned there, he had a break even of 38 this week with a projection of 37. So let's just hope he gets around the same sort of mark to be able to hold him so I can trade him out next week. I've then got Tyler Robinson, who has a projection of 33 with a break even of 25. So there's probably a little bit of cash there to be made with him. Sam Menenga has a 27 break even on a double game week this week, so hopefully a bit more cash as well. Then I've got Casey Prather, who's got a break even of 10, and Benny Henschel, who has a break even of 11. So I could potentially make more cash out of all 5 of those players on the bench, as well as get pretty good points out of all 5 of them as well. So 3 of them will play double game weeks, and the 2 guys on singles, we're touching on Benny Henschel with obviously getting probably some more minutes with Bryce Cotton being out, and obviously Casey Prather, I think, has had a better season than I would have thought he was going to have at the start of the year as well. So a really, really solid bench. But looking at my starters, this is where it gets really exciting for me. So Parker Jackson-Cartwright and Matthew Dellavedova currently are my point guard or guard duos there as well, and Parker will be my captain with a projection of 81 this week as well, which would be very, very nice. And Matthew Dellavedova has a projection of 66 with a break-even of 48 as well, so he could look to potentially make a little bit more cash for me as well. Let's just hope he makes another 15, 20K. So if he hits his 66 projection, he will make another 18.2K for me this week. Then I've brought in Matt Hurt, like we spoke about a little bit earlier. Still a lot of questions about him and his role for South East Melbourne under their new coach. But with a break-even of 67, I'm not too worried about the break-even. It's about obviously making maximum amount of points out of Matt Hurt this week. So he's looking at a projection of 68. I'll get that out eventually. And then I've obviously got Jack White and Sam Wardenberg. So Jack White of the 74 break-even and a projection of 75. And Sam Wardenberg has a break-even of 46 with a projection of 58. But my overall team projection, which is getting me the most excited now, I'm in a few Discord group chats with other NBL SuperCoach sort of groups and obviously my mates and everything like that. I haven't seen a higher projection than myself for this round currently, but I've got a projection right now of 500 with 14.7K left in the bank. So I'm looking forward to this week. Hopefully I can start to fly up those ranks, mate. But what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just horrible thoughts. I'm upset. I'm irritated when I look at it.
Nearly spat my Gatorade out there, mate.
Yeah, I'm biting my tongue. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to whinge. I'm going to take this to have a little bit of a whinge and a rant. Obviously, Sam Wardenberg talked about that enough. But it's shit like Casey Prather. I had Casey Prather in my team at the start of the year. He even played a round and scored well, and then got him out. And now he's starting to generate some good cash. The whole Ben Henschel saga, I think, really, if you listen to any SuperCoach pod, everybody is just in this love-hate relationship with Ben Henschel because of what he did to everybody last year. And now he's sort of doing it again. I think a lot of people did exactly what I did and was like, all right, time to just clip him, get him out. And now he's all of a sudden going to get a whole heap of time. So, yeah, I'm afraid because I think you're definitely going to obviously rise up this week having such a high projection. Things have to go really bad for you to not sort of power up the rankings this week. And then it's the thing of you still generating a whole heap of cash. If I'm going to pick at anything, it's just definitely Dellavedova, purely based on his injury scare and how Melbourne are going to perform without Shea Ely, but that can be a positive for Delhi. So I see the reason why you brought him in, because he could see more ball. You're going to maybe see more assists from Delhi, and then even more points because he's got to be able to still be scoring. So all of a sudden you've got Delhi on double doubles because he's got to be the provider and also be the inspirer. So it could be really good, but if he's carrying that injury, that's definitely the risk with him. But I don't know, everything else, you're in very, very, very good shape.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to this week. I'll be tuning in, to say the least, at all these 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. game times that are going on.
I'm not
with
looking
obviously the
forward
time
to our
differences
group
and all that
chat
sort
at
of stuff.
all. Not looking forward to it at all.
I'll be trying to keep it as quiet as possible, which is unlike me, but I'll be trying to keep it as quiet as possible to obviously not
We'll see if you can
disrupt
hold your tongue.
the Supercoach guys. I definitely won't be able to. But
No.
that will wrap up, obviously, looking at our teams for this round. Now, we're going to be getting in to probably my favourite segment on these Supercoach shows, and that is Darke's Doubles. This is the best captain segment that you can find on NBL SuperCoach podcasts around the world. Now, Jeremy Darke, kick us off,
Around the
mate.
world.
Now, you've got
Mr. Worldwide we are now, huh?
we are Mr. Worldwide. We are now, mate.
Mr.
That is the
Worldwide.
way we are going now. Now, you've got 5 names written down here for Darke's Doubles this week, and it's only right, obviously, with the amount of players playing double game weeks this week. But can you give us your top 5 from 5 to 1 captain choices of this week for Darke's Doubles?
All right, 5 to 1. I think we go number 5. You put in Matt Hurt. Like we said, he could definitely be a big scorer with Walton Jr. out. He's been consistent for Southeast Melbourne. And with Walton Jr. being injured, getting a new coach, we could see even a bigger role for Matt Hurt. It could go the other way. So it is a little bit of a risk. And that's why he is at number 5, because there is a little bit of unknowns. But I think you're definitely going to get a 60, and it could go up dramatically if his role increases or he gets the ball in his hands even more, because he has been absolutely solid for the Phoenix. Then you have Trey Kell. Now, this could be a huge pod, because I think not a lot of people are bringing in Illawarra players. I think if you had Illawarra players, then that's the reason why you would have them. But you could just do a sidewood trade just to create a little bit of a point of difference this week. If you have someone that is a good scorer in the price range of Trey Kell, you could even throw in Tyler Harvey's been scoring well as well, but Kell has been the best all-round player. I think he's projected for 60 this week, but I think that's a little bit underdone. I think you're probably going to get more like, probably pushing up around 80, and he could definitely go off, because he's shown before that he's a triple threat double, and he could be a double threat. So you could be getting some massive points out of him. And then moving into a couple of guys I think that we've talked about a lot already is Xavier Cooks. Yeah, definitely a huge prospect for captaincy, because they've got some really good matchups, Sydney, and he's projected for 70 this week. So, which is also, I believe, underdone. I think he's been scoring up around closer to 40 each week. So you're getting into these same realms as some of the other guys above us, above him on this list. And the next one would be Melbourne United, Jack White. Now, they're coming up against Illawarra this week. And I think if Melbourne are to be any chance of beating the Illawarra Hawks, I think Jack White needs to have a massive game. He needs to show that he's dominant under the rim. He needs to be aggressive and physical, which is only going to lead to more Supercoach points, because he's going to get put back. So you're getting some rebounds, and you're getting the scoring points as well. And we should see the ball in his hands quite a lot. And then I think he needs to be big defensively. So we might even see some extra blocks and forced turnovers, steals for Jack White this week. So definitely the number 2 on my list. But I don't know if anyone is brave enough to take the C off Park and Jackson Cartwright this week, purely because of how he started. Like, the consistency in these points is ridiculous. He even sort of had a quieter shooting game in the second game for New Zealand against Perth, and still put up huge points, because he's getting so many assists, getting steals. So you if you're not putting it on Parker Jackson Cartwright, you're trying to chase points, and you're really trying to taking a risk to move up, but it could definitely work in as an adverse effect and push you way down, because if you take a risk on anybody else, you could be losing sort of 10, 20 points at the end of a double game week, because Parker Jackson Cartwright is going to score you 40 plus.
Yeah, I think it's too early to be taking those sort of risks. I know we've obviously just touched on it before with obviously the Xavier Cooks one, but I think you've got to go with obviously what everyone else is doing at these parts of the season. But you've nailed it there, man. I think Parker Jackson Cartwright is the number one captain choice, and I think he'll be heavily captained this week there as well. So to wrap that up quickly there, we've got Nat Hurt at number 5, Trey Kell number 4, Xavier Cooks number 3, Jack White number 2, and Parker Jackson Cartwright at number 1. But that will wrap up today's episode of NBL SuperCoach Sessions. It's been a great episode. Obviously, lots of content that we've gone through there as well. It's a very late sort of night over here in Vegas. It's 3 a.m. right now, so I'm looking forward to heading to bed. My brain's starting to shut down a little bit here, but been a really, really good episode here, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to obviously seeing what is going on with everyone's NBL Supercoach teams this week as well. And if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask us or anything like that, make sure you go and check us out on Instagram at the Basketball Fix Podcast and send us any of the messages that you guys have that you want to be answered on this show as well. We can either answer it on a live sort of video on our Instagram, or we can do it on the next episode of NBL Supercoach Sessions as well. But in terms of obviously content coming out, we've got Beyond the Buzzer coming out tomorrow afternoon. We've got Higgins' Hot 3 Takes coming back after a couple of weeks off, and Ryan's Path to Pro series as well. Now, Jez, we've been touching on this over the last couple of episodes as well, mate, but we're doing NBL game previews. I'd love for you to give the listeners a little bit of an insight into what we're doing there, how they can find them, and what they're all about.
Yeah, well, we're geeking out a little bit, just like we do with Supercoach. We're breaking the games down. We're finding the right matchups, the interesting things that are going to make or break each game. So putting those down on paper, giving you some really, really tough key stats that can help you if you're a little bit of a punter or you like to follow trends, then they're going to be in there as well. But then we're keeping it all about the basketball and making sure that you are prepared and you know exactly what is going to make or break each game. So jump online to thebasketballfix.com. You'll see us put up some posts over the weekend that give you direct links from our social media channels. So yeah, it's just about following the Basketball Fix, and we're going to give you everything and all the knowledge that we have about the NBL in all of its different ways, shapes, and forms. And that's definitely on the Basketball Fix with the game previews heading into each weekend.
Make sure you get on fast, because if you don't, you're going to be left well and truly behind in terms of what we're building over here at the Basketball Fix. But again, that will wrap up today's episode. We are very appreciative of all your time today. And until next time, we hope you've got your Basketball Fix.
Get some sleep, Josh.
With stars come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3.
Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh my goodness.